What's up guys, it's IOF. Today we're going to remake God Is A Weapon by Falling in Reverse on Marilyn Manson, and it's going to sound like this. Falling in Reverse is one of the biggest bands in the scene right now, and this song with this feature by Marilyn Manson was definitely iconic, like there couldn't be a better fitting feature for this song and this vibe. For this one I tried to get it sounding as close as possible to the original song, matching all the layers and the character of each and every tone in the guitars, the drums, the bass, the electronic drums, the synths and everything. So yeah, let's open the project file. So instead of starting with the intro, I started with the hook and I started with the 8-string rhythm guitars. I did quad tracking for these rhythm guitars, and the first pair of guitars sounds like this. You see, it's very simple playing just one note and letting it ring forever. But for the other pair of guitars, she actually played it a little bit differently. You see, in this one it has a few more hits, because I felt that in the original it had a little bit more bounce in the playing, so I suspect that they did something like this. Let's see how both sound together. You see, you can barely hear the attacks of the second guitar, and this is how it is in the original as well. For both of these guitars I used this preset that I created for Neural DSP Kali that you can also download for free in the description as well. But the trick to get these guitars to sound like that, like so compressed and almost peaking, was to actually crank up the preamp when I'm recording them. And the dry signal actually looked like that and sounds like that. So after recording these guitars peaking on purpose and then going to Neural DSP Kali, then I did this processing. I first put these two EQs here, just boosting a tiny bit on 2K, on 4K and also on 800 Hz, and then I put this compressor, which as you can see compresses everything like crazy. And after that I just used this EQ right here, nothing too crazy. Then I recorded the bass guitar following the second pair of guitars I recorded. I'm usually reamping my bass 5 times, and I use multiple devices like my Neural DSP Quad Cortex, but I also included one of the presets that I'm using in all these in the description. For the mixing I used this transient designer to reduce the attack by a lot, as you can see, then these tape machine saturations to make the low end a little bit bigger, then this compressor. It's compressing like 7 dB, then I did this EQ right here taking out a little bit of the mids, and then this multiband compressor to control the low end. And that was everything for the bass guitar, and now we go to the most important part of this hook, which is actually the wrist bass. For the wrist bass I used this preset from my Serum preset pack, and in this situation the wrist bass is what carries the whole thing, not the 8-string guitars. For the mixing I just used this EQ that doesn't do pretty much anything. So let's listen how everything sounds until now. You see everything sounding pretty big already. Then I moved on to the drums and I used my own drums VST IOF drummer. You see, the pattern is pretty simple, and in terms of mixing, this is actually how it sounds 100% dry. You see right here, it's going to mixer track 10, and mixer track 10 is empty, and it's going to pre-master, which is empty as well. So this is how these drums sound 100% dry, but because I wanted a little bit more reverb on the snare, I actually used this snare one shot. And together with IOF drummer, it sounds like that. You see how it sounds with and without. For this one shot I used this EQ just to tame it a little bit, and to add all this reverb I used this reverb plugin, which is actually by far my favorite plugin for snare rooms. And before listening how everything sounds together until now, I also added all these effects for the first hit of the hook. All these effects are from my producer pack, and let's see now how everything sounds together. You see everything sounds nice and full and hitting pretty hard actually, and now we're ready to add all these ambient layers, the synths and everything. So for the ambient layers I started with this one that I played with my E-bow. It's just a steady note with a tiny bit of vibrato on the playing that makes it sound like a synth actually. For this one I used this preset for the amp that you can find again in the description. Then I actually used this weird EQ and this Valhalla Shimmer reverb with these exact settings. Then I layered this exact note with this synth from my Serum preset pack. I may have messed a little bit with the vibrato and vibrato speed, and it sounds like that. Again, just a steady note. I used this EQ, then this decapitator to make it sound a little bit more distorted, and then this EQ to boost a little bit the highs. And these two together create this ambience playing this steady note that sounds like this. But that was not enough, we have a few more ambient layers. Then I recorded another layer with my E-bow, this time I double tracked it, and I also did this drop at the end. I heard that something like that was going on in the original, so I had to copy it as well. I used the exact same amp preset and I also did the exact same things on the mixing, so I'm not going to go through them again. And then I also pitched up this same layer by 1 octave. Again, I used the exact same amp preset, the exact same mixing, and I just put this ozone imager to make it a little bit more stereo than the other layers. Then I layered this high octave thing with this preset from my Serum preset pack that I used earlier, but with a tiny bit different settings. But as you can see right here, I also used this pitch automation to add some vibratos and this pitch drop at the end. For this synth I didn't use anything of the mixing, it's exactly how it sounds straight from Serum. And let's see now how all these ambient layers sound together. You see, they create this nice and full ambience, and together with the rest of the layers that we were showing earlier, they make the full first part of the hook. So that was the first part of the hook, and now we move on to the second part where we just added a few more ambient layers. First I added this synth from my Serum preset pack, and again I did a tiny bit of pitch automation, you'll see exactly what I mean. On the mixing I didn't do anything again, it's exactly how it comes straight from Serum. And then I couldn't stop, so I recorded one more layer with my E-bow. For this one, for the amp, I used this other preset that again you can find in the description, and I used this EQ right here, again Valhalla Shimmer with these settings, and this imager to make it a little bit more stereo. And the very last layer for the hook is this one. Just some tremolo picking ambient guitar. I used the exact same preset that I used in the previous layer as well, and I did this EQ right here, and again Valhalla Shimmer. And now we're finally ready to listen to the full hook. now we'll go back to the intro and the verse that were the parts that were the most challenging for me actually. So I started with the kick and the snare, that for both of them I blended a bunch of sounds from my packs and made them sound like this. The kick before mixing it sounded like this, and after it sounded like that. I hope that you can hear the difference. I had to get this clipping effect, so I used JST clip with these exact settings. Then I used this transient designer to reduce both the attack and the release. Then I did this EQ to match a little bit the original. And then I added this multiband transient designer to reduce attack and sustain from the low end, but then increase attack and sustain on the mids and highs, so I get more of this clipping effect on the transient. After adding the kick and the snare, I noticed that in the original there was like a background percussion loop going on, so I tried to imitate that by using these three layers that I created. The first one is this one, that I used this sound from my producer pack and I also pitched it down a little bit and created this loop. And in the end I also used this weird EQ that doesn't make much of a difference, to be honest. Then I created this other percussion loop, again with another sample from my producer pack. For this one I just left it dry, and the last percussion loop I added was this one from Splice that I also pitched it down. I left it dry as well, and these three together sound like this. And here is what we have until now: the kick, the snare and the percussion loops. So now the only thing that is missing is the hi-hats. For the hats, first I added this sound from my producer pack. Then every few hits I added this accent hat. And together they sound like this. Then I also added this other sound from my producer pack that I also pitched it down. And finally I also added IOF drummer with a little bit of filtering, so I get also a kind of natural hat vibe. So after all this layering, we finally have the intro drums. I tried to match the drum tones as close as I could, so yeah, please don't go too hard on me. Then I slowly faded in all the ambient layers that we used for the hook. And then it was time for the bass. If I'm not wrong, for the bass guitar for the verse, they're using a real bass that sounds like this. Very basic playing, just following the notes of the chord progression. For the mixing, I used this compressor, this EQ, and this multiband compressor to control the low end. You see how much they're both compressing. And then it was time for recording the clean guitar. For the clean guitar I used this preset for my neural DSP Quad Cortex, and for the effects I used my UAD pedals and all these effects from my FM3. However, what defines the character of this tone is this chorus pedal right here, as you can actually find it as a plugin as well. I used it with my pedal, so I already had it in my chain. So yeah, for the mixing I also added these EQs and this compressor. Then I used this plugin on the lo-fi mode and the mix on 30% to get a little bit more filtered sound. Then this reverb, then again Valhalla Simmer, then this imager to make it a little bit more stereo, and I actually panned the whole thing a little bit to the left because this is what I could hear from the original song. So let's see what we have until now. And on this point, going to the next part, I noticed this ambient melody. Again, I used this synth from my Serum preset pack, and I cut all the highs and also add this Valhalla Simmer again. So what this melody is doing is actually blending the first part of the verse with the second one, and in the second one this guitar is being added. You see I've used a bunch of different guitars to get the tones as close as possible. For this guitar, again I used this tone from my Neural DSP Quad Cortex. I just added this drive pedal to make it a little bit more crunchy, and again I used these EQs and this compressor, this EQ right here, cleaning it a little bit and boosting the high frequencies, and then this reverb, and of course Valhalla Shimmer Verb. And now we have all the layers actually. You also notice that in the pre-chorus the chord progression changes, but all the playing and the layering remains the same actually. So that was everything for this one. In the description you will find links from my drum VST, from my Serum preset pack, and also for my producer course that contains all that, plus breaking down more instrumentals, a business course for producers, and a ton more stuff. Just go and check it out. And don't forget to download all the free stuff from the description. So yeah, I'll just play the full instrumental and I'll see you in the next ones.